need to bring these guns down.
More people's kids are gonna die.
The fighting and the violence is just out of control.
3 individuals with GSWs.
I miss my son.
10 people were hurt in a shooting.
4 of them dying of their injuries.
The tri-state is home to one of the largest gun violence problems in America.
I just dropped to the ground.
A 12-year-old girl and her mother in the hospital tonight.
You can't walk your own streets without getting shot.
545 people died in New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut last year alone.
We were taking gunfire. 5 people shot.
A problem too big to ignore.
He was just 14. He didn't even get to live a life. One mother cried, we all cried.
Over the past 2 years, our search for solutions took us inside.
Shot him.
Point blank?
Point blank.
Some of the tri-state's toughest and largest prisons. How long is your sentence?
20 years to life.
Where hundreds of convicted killers shared their stories with the Turn to Tara team.
I committed unspeakable acts.
Welcome to Under the Gun. I'm News 12 senior investigative reporter Tara Rosenblum. But my career here at News 12 started as a field reporter, covering the news of the day. That's the very latest tonight in Mount Vernon. Tara Rosenblum, News 12, and the news of the day on Saturday, December 18th, 2004. Just 6 months after I started my job here,
he was just gone.
Was the murder of Omar Torres Colon.
So it started 3 years ago. They were shooting at each other.
That gun-related death would be just the first of so many. One man confirmed dead, shot and killed. Funeral arrangements have been finalized. The call to stop all the violence only seems to grow louder. For the next 2 decades, it was report. Many families telling us that they're afraid to go out of their homes tonight, and repeat. Raymond Harris lost his life at the age of 25.
I just know enough is enough.
The names and places changed, but it was always the same crime tape, same flashing lights, same story.
There's a body count of those who've been shot.
Someone using a gun to settle a score.
It's become the norm in our neighborhoods.
But in 2021, it wasn't the same. It was worse.
This ain't right.
Just as the tri-state was moving away from being the nation's epicenter of the COVID outbreak, another crisis moved in: gun violence. That year, the tri-state saw 3,622 shootings, killing 971 people, levels we hadn't seen since the crack epidemic in the 1980s. It felt as though gun violence was spiraling out of control.
As the nation mourns recent mass shootings.
To the point where murders weren't even making the lead stories in our newscasts. But rather than continue to report on the what, our Turn to Tara team decided to do something to figure out the why.
The worst moment in my life is the moment I'll be remembered for.
You've already heard what politicians, police, and even pastors think is the why, but we knew no explanation is complete without hearing from one more group.
I know my story can help save lives.
Over the past 2 years, my team journeyed behind razor wire, inside the tri-state's toughest and largest prisons, to meet with people the policymakers don't always have access to. Murderers who have had decades to reflect on why they chose to pull the trigger. Such as orphaned Bronx high school dropout turned drug dealer Rashid Rice.
One thing led to another. By the time I was 18, I was locked up now for 37 years. Good life, in a bad situation.
One-time Yonkers football star Eamon Margie.
I just knew that everything that I wanted to do, accomplish for myself at the time, was out the window.
I hope that he rots in his own hell.
And the man responsible for the most gruesome crime scene in Long Island history.
My name is David Laffer. My sentence is 5 life sentences without the possibility of parole.
So, essentially, you'll never breathe a free breath again.
That's correct.
Laffer is one of many of the convicted killers we sat down with, whose upbringing on Long Island isn't what you might expect.
It was a good childhood. Both my parents were teachers. I had my share of friends, had a good time in school. Very typical suburban upbringing.
At one point, he was on the fast track to a life of service.
I enlisted into the Army Reserves, graduated high school, left for basic training. Immediately went to intelligence school at Fort Huachuca, Arizona.
Until medical issues sent his life into a tailspin.
More than 1,000 prescription pills were found inside Laffer's Medford home.
What did the worst of your addiction look like?
Well, when I was arrested, I'm 6 feet tall, and I was arrested at 122 pounds, so that's probably the worst.
Laffer was headed down a dark, drug-filled path.
His addiction had turned to desperation, putting him on a mission of murderous mayhem at this Medford pharmacy.
Pretty much the day before, I realized there were no more doctors to go to, no more prescriptions to fill. At that point, I said, all right, rob a pharmacy.
I can't believe my daughter's gone.
How did you feel when you pulled the trigger?
I was same distance I am to you, maybe a little closer to the pharmacist. Once that first shot went off, that was it. Mentally, just a switch just sort of triggered.
The customers came into the store, they were each executed, shot at close range, both from behind.
And then from there, the rest of the robbery commenced.
And 3 other people were shot.
Correct.
Margie has a similar story.
I grew up with 2 loving parents who supported me, gave me every advantage I needed to become successful.
Growing up with doting immigrant parents, he found fame on the gridiron at Roosevelt High.
Cutting the corner! I was kind of like shunned away or like made fun of because I didn't know the language. So I learned early on that if you get good in sports, people start to like you.
Margie eventually made the roster at the University of New Haven, but soon his road back home put him on the wrong path.
After high school, I kind of surrounded myself with individuals on Elm Street, the drug dealers. I was attracted to everything that attracted. The fast women, the going out to partying, hanging out, drinking. That's what I was attracted to. And carrying a gun goes hand in hand with drug dealing.
The week before Christmas in 2004, he carried that gun to this Yonkers intersection to settle a turf war, killing 26-year-old Omar Torres Colon.
Can't really describe it. I almost feel like it was an out-of-body experience. It's almost like I blacked out. It's taken me a long time to say these things out loud because it's very hard to relive that somebody lost their life because of my actions.
Then there's Rashid Rice, whose path to prison was much more predictable.
My father died when I was 6. He was murdered. My mother overdosed on heroin.
So you were an orphan by the age of 11?
Yes. I had to find a way to take care of myself. Friends introduced me to friends who were drug dealers, took a liking to me, knew I was down and out, became a drug dealer.
How old were you when you first held a gun?
Maybe 14, 15.
So you weren't even old enough to drive, but you had a gun in your hand.
I had a gun. You get money, you feel you're somebody. You know, you have to protect your little turf, your little territory. It becomes like synonymous with your life. Drugs, guns, you know, violence.
Violence that escalated to murder on the night of March 19th, 1992, when Rice says a rival dealer encroached on his turf.
He me-mugged me. I shot him.
Point blank?
Point blank.
3 examples of lives ended and altered by gun violence that we uncovered only after asking the Department of Corrections to greenlight something they've never approved before, a survey of every prisoner convicted of gun-related murders. After months of back and forth, the DOC finally said yes, and so the Turn to Tara team asked 500 inmates 22 straightforward questions about their gun usage and received 101 responses. We then sat down with 12 of the respondents to give the numbers more context. What we found is an eye-opening glimpse of what is really happening in our neighborhoods. For starters, despite some of the strictest gun laws in the country, we found guns are plentiful on the streets of the tri-state and easy to get.
We would get boxes of guns, fully automatic weapons, AK-47s. We had all types of guns.
Where did you get access to a gun?
I had a pistol permit.
But out of all 100 respondents, Laffer is one of just 2 killers who bought their guns legally. The 2 most common answers were they bought the gun off the street or were given one by a friend.
So you didn't have a permit?
No. This is a stolen gun.
Of those who illegally purchased a gun, the average price was $500. But the cheapest weapon costs less than 2 packs of cigarettes, just $20, while the most expensive was for a Tech 9 like this one for $1,500.
I remember specifically the AK was like $800, but if it was a handgun, $400 to $500.
That may be why 89% of the guns listed in our survey were handguns. Next were shotguns. Just one inmate used a hunting-style rifle, a .30-30 Winchester like this one.
.45 caliber pistol.
.357.
And just 1 out of 5 prisoners said it was important to them whether the gun had been used in another crime. But there was an even more pressing question we wanted them to answer.
What do you think can be done to stop this crisis of gun violence?
I'm glad you asked for that.
Coming up, one chair, so many stories, a region in crisis. What these killers say may stop the next shooter from pulling the trigger.
Multiple solutions stacked up on top of each other can give us a better fight. Me sitting in this chair talking with you right now, I know my story can help save lives.
We are behind barbed wire.
It was an expected sentence. I'm sure if he could have given me more time, he would have.
At one of America's most notorious maximum security prisons to look for solutions to gun violence.
What do your tattoos mean?
Death before dishonor.
And here inside Sing Sing, there are no shortage of convicted killers who often adhere to a strict code of silence when it comes to their vicious crimes.
Even the hardest gangbangers, they wish they would have done things differently.
But today, you're hearing their stories in graphic detail, and in most cases, for the first time.
That shame and that guilt, I'll live with that for the rest of my life.
Because our team was granted extremely rare access to survey hundreds of prisoners who long lived under the gun.
You've got a lot more years here.
I do. This is the end result of the choices that I made.
We put murderers in prison to get them off the streets.
Once you take somebody's life, you can't take it back.
But what if these prisoners could somehow make those very streets safer?
So you've had a lot of time to kind of...
Reflect?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. You know, being in the prison system, you have a lot of hours in your own thoughts.
If anyone knows violence, it's the people behind these walls. So that's why, despite their heinous actions, we asked them to weigh in on the tri-state's intense gun violence crisis, hoping they could put a bullseye on the root cause and potential solutions.
Why do you think that the problem in the past year or 2 has gotten so much worse?
I think after the pandemic, I think everybody didn't care what goes on in their lives anymore. I think the pandemic scared a lot of people, and rightly so, but the kids that were into that lifestyle, they just went haywire.
Do you think that this is a problem that can get better?
Yes, if we're able to tackle it together, yes. The same way the whole community, the whole country, even the whole world came together to fight COVID-19, we need to stand together the same way we did to fight COVID-19 to help stop the gun violence epidemic that's going on right now in our community.
Eamon Margie has had plenty of time to think. He's almost 2 decades into his 20-year-to-life sentence. He feels the answer has less to do with changing gun laws and more to do with changing attitudes.
What do you think can be done to stop this crisis of gun violence?
I'm glad you asked for that, because this is something that I've been thinking about for a long time now. Education to me is the most important key to helping curb and combat gun violence. But education alone in the school system is not enough. We need to expand the ways in which we teach our youth. The school systems teach the basic classes, the math, the English, the history, the science, but these classes can't teach the youth how to deal with obstacles they face on a daily basis. The majority of these kids that are committing these gun violent acts never had a positive male role model in the household. So who do these kids turn to for role models? The local gang members in the street corners, drug dealers, individuals that carry guns. So I believe a great solution for gun violence would be to implement another class in the school system that's mandatory for the youth to participate in, and teach them more independent thinking. Teach them how to become leaders instead of followers. Teach them the importance of being accountable and being responsible.
Then there's the man responsible for the Medford massacre, David Laffer.
Why do you think gun violence is spiking?
Why do I think it's spiking? Too many illegal guns in the hands of people that don't care how they use them. I do believe that citizens should have the right to carry pistols, as long as they go through the background check and training and all that.
What actions should lawmakers be taking right now to stem gun violence across the tri-state?
I don't think it's a state issue. I think it's a federal issue. ATF, FBI, they really need to start cracking down on the illegal transfer of guns from states that have very lax laws. New York's got extremely strict weapons laws. The only step more that New York can do would be just to outlaw every small arm that there is, which they're obviously not going to do. It's a little unconstitutional. So now it's the ATF that really has to track where all the weapons are coming from, getting into the wrong hands.
Our survey revealed just how easy it is for weapons to end up in the wrong hands. Only 6 of the 100 inmates who responded said they could legally purchase a gun. Their ideas on prevention also ran the gamut, from full unrestricted carry to help reduce the threat, a proposal the inmate himself called odd but true, to bring back stop and frisk. But by far, the most common response was more education and intervention for young people, particularly young men. Rashid Rice, who lost both his parents at a young age, ending up on the streets, and literally wears his violent Bronx childhood on his arm, is convinced intervention would have made a difference for him.
What do those bullets signify?
The life that I was living. Murder is a daily thing. You see murder daily. 10 of my childhood friends was murdered. You know, I was shot at multiple times. That was a reality.
So what do you think needs to happen to curb gun violence across the tri-state?
Some type of mentorship program that could, get to these kids and try to, convince them that what they're doing is not right. Give them another outlet. They think a lot of times that these people that they're with are their families. They look at them as family. And they don't realize that they're not family. So they need more positive influences on them.
So what's the solution to the gun violence problem now that's run amok in New York?
I think a lot of the solution is, trying to get to these young kids and trying to, show them a different way. Trying to show them that this is not that. Gun violence is not the answer. They're involved in these gangs, and similarly, they probably think, these are my family. These are the guys I'm gonna ride for, quote unquote. These are the guys I'm gonna protect. But they're not your family. You're gonna realize years from now, when you're sitting in prison with 40, 50 years to life, you made a mistake. That life you thought you was living is not the life you should have been living.
That realization comes too late for the men behind these walls, but maybe their experience can prevent anyone else from joining them.
She wasn't gonna hurt anybody. And he could have just taken what he needed and left, and he didn't.
Coming up, you've heard from the men who pulled the trigger. Now hear from the people left to pick up the pieces of their lives, shattered by violence. For every murderer behind these walls, there are countless families left to pick up the pieces, without the loved ones taken from them.
He didn't deserve to die. When she passed away, I had no one to go to.
You've already met 3 of the 101 inmates who participated in our groundbreaking survey. Now it's time to come face to face with some of their victims' relatives.
She was little. She was 17. She was a kid. He killed a piece of us when he did that.
Healing is a journey with no end for Virginia Colon.
He was a happy, hardworking, family person. Loved his family so much.
Her younger brother, Omar Torres Colon, was gunned down by Eamon Margie outside of Yonkers Deli in 2004.
What would you like to say to Eamon Margie if he was able to watch this right now?
He got what he deserved. He had no reason to kill my brother. There's a God. There is a God, and God knew exactly that it was wrong what they did.
But it was a jury that found Margie guilty of murder, with the judge sentencing him to 20 years to life.
Do you feel like justice was served?
In a way, there's nothing that could bring my brother back, but yes.
Have you forgiven yourself?
That's tough. I was able to move forward with my life and try to make the best out of my life. But to actually forgive myself, I don't think I'll ever forgive myself.
Eamon Margie says he's sorry and that he's a changed man. Do you believe him?
No, absolutely not.
She wasn't gonna hurt anybody, and he could have just taken what he needed and left.
Leslie Mejia's sister Jennifer was only 17 years old and 5 days away from graduating high school when she found herself in the crosshairs of a desperate, drug-fueled robbery attempt at a Medford pharmacy in 2011.
She was ready to start a new chapter in her life. She wanted to be a doctor.
All dreams that died when David Lafford decided to pull the trigger.
I hope that he realizes what he took from people.
Have you forgiven yourself for what's happened?
No.
David, why'd you do it?
So what do you want their family members to know?
That I think about them every day. That I'm not the evil monster that the media made me out to be.
You said you weren't the evil monster that ended 4 lives. What are you? How would you describe what you did?
Selfish and greedy.
No matter how bad he feels, it's not gonna bring them back. He took a piece from us that we can't get back no matter what he says.
What do you hope comes out of our conversation here today?
I hope I'm able to save at least one life. I hope at least one child or one youth is able to take something away from this and understand that there's more to life than making the wrong decisions.